Significant statements by Ben Rich regarding advanced aerospace propulsion systems and technology. Ben Rich, very interesting gentleman. I met with his son Michael Rich at the RAND Corporation. He was very nice, didn't reveal any secrets, but important to keep in mind, Ben took over the reins of the Skunk Works from Kelly Johnson in Burbank back in 1975. He headed the Skunk Works until 1991. And I want to really bring out some points here that I think are very important regarding what Ben Rich said about the technologies that we're talking about in this conference. Now, according to Ben Rich, and you can verify all of these, they've been authenticated. I invite you to check this out yourself. We did the F-104, the C-130, the U-2, SR-71, F-117, and many other programs that I can't talk about. We are still working very hard. I just can't tell you what we're doing. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base slide presentation, September 26, 1992. Again, the Air Force has just given us a contract to take ET back home. We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects. It would take an act of God to get them out to benefit humanity. There is an error in the equations. What equations is he talking about? There is an error in the equations, and we have figured it out and now know how to travel to the stars, and it won't take a lifetime to do it. So what equations is Ben Rich talking about here? It is time to end all secrecy on this, as it no longer poses a national security threat, and make the technology available for use in the private sector. It says we have some new things. We are not stagnating. What we are doing is updating ourselves without advertising. There are some new programs and certain things, some of them 20 or 30 years old, that are still breakthroughs and appropriate to keep quiet about. Other people don't have them yet. And then it says here, September 7th, 1988, AIAA lecture, so you can back that up too. I wish I could tell you about the projects we are currently working on. They are both fascinating and fantastic. They call for technologies once only dreamed of by science fiction writers, according to Ben Rich. What could that mean? Now, this is a new group that maybe some of you haven't heard of before. I got this from the Huntington Library from the papers of Ben R. Rich. The Skunk Works is always busy. It's fortunate that we are able to turn out a breakthrough about every 10 years. The airplanes that we are building today, you won't hear about for another 10 years. Anything you can think of, we can do. And if not, maybe we have already done it. I cannot talk to you about anything we are doing today or have been doing probably for at least 5 or 10 years. If you saw the configurations I have on my desk today, they're mind-boggling, because if you can think of it, we can design it at the Skunk Works. So that's according to Ben Rich. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't think you're going to get a better group of comments regarding advanced aerospace propulsion systems. Now, John Andrews, who we mentioned before, was very good friends with Ben Rich. These two gentlemen, over decades, played this word Scrabble game where Ben Rich would kind of submit little hints to John, and that's how he was able to design the F-19 stealth model that turned out to be the highest selling plastic aircraft model of all history. Over 1 million units were sold. So John Andrews wrote a letter in 1986 to Ben Rich regarding his personal opinion of UFOs, even of crash retrievals. This is his original reply letter to John Andrews, dated July 8th, 1986. It says, "Dear John, in response to your letter of July 1st, I am a believer, and so is Kelly Johnson." So he's talking about UFOs, extraterrestrial technology. So if it's good enough for Kelly Johnson, to me, it's good enough for me. Now, here is the reply that John Andrews sent back to Ben Rich. He wanted to get some clarification. So Mr. Ben Rich, Lockheed Advanced Aeronautics Company, this is Burbank, California, 10 July 1986. Dear Ben, a short note to clarify your interesting response regarding being a quote-unquote believer contained in your 8th July 1986 letter. The topic is UFO. I believe there are lots of UFOs. I am also tending to believe there are two types of UFOs or categories. A, man-made UFOs. B, extraterrestrial UFOs. I believe with certainty in man-made UFOs. I am tending to believe there are also extraterrestrial UFOs. Having the highest respect for both you and Kelly, I'd appreciate knowing your belief in both categories. So then Ben Rich sent back the letter. I was able to get the actual letter. Lockheed Company letterhead, July 21st, 1986. Dear John, this is the response. Yes, I'm a believer in both categories. I feel everything is possible. Many of our man-made UFOs were unfunded opportunities. In both categories, there are lots of kooks and charlatans. Be cautious, Ben Rich. So, the $64 billion question is, what did Ben Rich mean when he talked about unfunded opportunities, UFO? Was Ben Rich talking about programs that didn't get funded at the Skunk Works? Or, as some have suggested, which could be a possibility, was he talking about freebies or hand-me-downs that we got for others? Is that a possibility? It's certainly a possibility. But by 1995, Ben had passed away, so we don't know the answer to that question. Now, a good friend of mine, Jim Goodall, wrote a letter to Ben Rich, basically requesting a taped interview. Just go over a couple of quick points. I would like to do a taped interview with you sometime in the near future. So obviously Jim knew that time was getting short for Ben. He wanted to get all this documented on videotape. It says, we would cover everything that you have ever been involved in with your many years at Lockheed Skunk Works. We would cover all bases, leaving nothing out. He also said that he'd be glad to hold on to that tape for 10 years, 20 years, until he decided that it was appropriate to release into the public domain. Now, unfortunately, that interview never took place because, as we mentioned, Ben Rich passed away in 1995. But just prior to Ben's passing, Jim Goodall got one final telephone conversation into Ben Rich, who was dying at the hospital, and this is what Ben Rich told Jim Goodall over the phone just before he died. He says, Jim, we have things in the Nevada desert that are 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. If you've seen it on Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think it's going to get any better than that. Talking about technologies that are 50 years beyond what we can comprehend from the Skunk Works.